NBC's Aaron Gilchrist is covering the White House for us. Also with us, former Republican governor of Ohio, John Kasich, and MSNBC political analyst. Okay, Governor, let's start with that little slice of the ad money, which is defining Kamala Harris. Look, there are people out there not paying attention. And while defining a candidate is nothing new in politics, defining someone who's come to the race this late is a new challenge. So talk to me about what you see and what you think money might be able to buy.
Well, look, first of all, there is no reason to try to define Donald Trump. Everybody in America has an opinion of him, so there's no reason to spend a lot of money talking about that. But when it comes to Kamala Harris, she's largely unknown still. She's sort of she's really not defined. So as a result of that, people can attach whatever feelings or thinking they have to her and say, well, that's who she is. So now what the Trump people are beginning to do is to say, no, let us tell you who Kamala Harris is. Let me give you the whole script here. Let me give you the whole history. And so that's the battle that we're on to. Of course, the earned media is going to matter a lot. So pretty soon, Kamala is going to be having to sit down for some interviews, and then she's going to have to run the media gauntlet and see how she can carry herself. If she does well, that's going to be big kudos for her. If she stumbles and doesn't do well, then that's a whole new ball game. So we've got to wait and see. But it's all about how people are going to define who she is and how is she going to define herself in specific terms. Like the New York Times today said here are 21 questions that she should have to answer. It's all interesting.
There was also a really interesting article today in the Times, Governor, by Nate Cohn, who goes through Trump's many attempts to define Harris in a negative way, race, gender, her intellect, arguing none of them have landed, but he points to a new line of attack, that she's just more of the same failed Biden-Harris administration policies. Could the Harris campaign run into trouble trying to show she is a change agent if Trump is able to tie her to, for lack of a better phrase, the same old Joe Biden?
I think she's going to try to distance herself from Joe Biden in a number of ways, and we're beginning to see that happen. On one hand, she said, I was there for every crossed T and dotted I, but now she's beginning to say, well, this is where I am on, for example, inflation. I've been arguing for months now that the Biden administration was in denial about the problem of inflation and how it affects average folks. She's not doing that. She's saying prices are too high. So she's sort of, and that's not disloyal. I mean, she's the vice president, not the president, but she's now trying to lay out an agenda. She said she's not for Medicare for all anymore. But people are going to ask her that. And there's the other thing they're going to ask her, in my opinion, Chris. You were there for 3.5 years. Why didn't you do more then? And she'll have to answer that. And there'll be some tough questions and some roads for her to cross, but we'll see how she does. If she stumbles, she's got a problem.
Yeah, the next month is going to tell us a lot. Interviews, the debate, obviously. But, Aaron, let me go back to the governor's point, which is part of this is about who she is, right? And we saw at the convention that they're trying to show her as relatable. She understands your problems. But tell us a little more about the specific issues.
Well, that really is the message that the campaign is focusing on getting out there, showing both that the vice president is relatable, but also that she understands people's problems and has ideas on how to address some of those issues. And look, the reality is the campaign is about to open the floodgates when it comes to advertising. We know from the campaign that they are spending $370 million on TV and digital advertising starting 1 week from today. So from Labor Day to Election Day, that is the planned spend. And we also know that that's when sort of the non-politicos are starting to pay more attention to what's happening in these campaigns. They're going to be seeing Harris Walls advertising during sort of high interest TV programming, season premieres, big sporting events, things like that. And then there's a $200 million spend just on digital advertising. We're not talking about social media here. We're talking about YouTube and Hulu and Spotify, places like that. And they believe that they can get into those places early before the Trump campaign can, buy up the most significant time around these TV and digital moments, and that's how they can get their message out. One where the vice president says she wants to talk about how she plans to build build what she's called an opportunity economy, lowering costs, creating jobs. And one way that they're doing that is with two new ads that came out this week. I want to play a little portion of one ad that came out this week that sort of talks about both what the vice president wants to do and how she's contrasting herself with former President Trump.
I will be laser focused on creating opportunities for the middle class that advance their economic security, stability, and dignity. If you want to know who someone cares about, look who they fight for. Donald Trump fights for billionaires and large corporations. I will fight to give money back to working and middle class Americans.
And so we also know that today, as we talk about contrast here, that the former president's running mate, J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, plans to be out on the campaign trail today in Wisconsin, a battleground state, obviously, talking about the economy, talking about inflation, and tying what they see as bad parts of those things to the Biden administration and to Vice President Harris in particular. The advertising blitz that we'll see from the Harris-Walz campaign is going to be in those battleground states, but there's also an 8-figure buy, Chris, nationally over the course of the next 9.5 or so weeks before the election.
Governor, you know what it costs to run a campaign, and I have yet to meet a current or former campaign manager who felt they had more money than they could possibly use. So it was really interesting to me to read in the Bulwark that Trump's campaign is spending tens of thousands of dollars to run cable news ads. We know he watches a lot of cable news this week in South Florida, so they can be seen in and around the ex-president's Mar-a-Lago club.
What can I tell you?
I'll just wait to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, it's kind of a waste of money. I mean, to be running them there so he can see them. I mean, that's Donald Trump, right? But Chris, we have to realize. Let me tell you a little story. Jim Rhodes was once the governor of Ohio, very well respected, you might remember, you've heard that name. Mm-hmm. He brought George Bush, H.W. Bush, the father of Bush, into his office. And he said to Bush, the only thing that matters, and he reached in his pocket and he slammed his wallet down on the desk and he said, that's all that matters in elections, don't forget it. So we have a lot of uncertainty with the economy. Tax cuts are going to expire. That means taxes could go up. That creates uncertainty. I believe this election is going to come down to the debate. Who is going to provide, and specifically, the best chance for American families to get ahead and to be financially secure? Whoever wins that debate, whether it's Harris or whether it's Trump, that is the person that's going to win this election. All the other things are secondary. I mean, the border may matter to a large degree, but it all gets down to how do I feel about my financial future? And that's where this thing is going to head over the next, 70 days.